to edit for kind of that amount of time, and the kind of constant kind of trying to find the film, you know, because we've been on such a kind of intense journey to get to the end of the shoot, right from the kind of early stages of development through iFeatures. The edit was the place probably where I learnt the most.
Hope, can you just start us off? I mean, this is a very scene-setting question to talk about where the original idea came from. I know your short films, quite often, lots of them have a sort of darker comedy. David Troughton. So this is drama, obviously, which is
drama. Yeah, absolutely. I think in my shorts, there we are. In my shorts, there was grief. I was exploring grief, and that is something that I'm quite drawn to. I think there's something that was interesting to me about this, was thinking about that period of time where after something awful happens, where there's an opportunity to kind of stay in that space and to actually interrogate it and see if you can make change. And so that was the sort of theme that kind of stayed with me throughout. But it was originally about a family who can't communicate, who can't talk to each other, and what would it take to kind of get them to start talking. So that was the kind of starting point. And then I thought it would just be interesting to watch that, see how that could happen.
I mean, that seems like a perfect place to go to, David and Ellie. I mean, it's about people who can't communicate. Can you talk about the brief that you had from Hope on how to develop these characters in this relationship?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, my notes always during the filming was a little less. It was a man who was keeping everything in until the final release. Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, right. Little more. Right. Yeah, it was a wonderful film to be on. We had such fun. We did, believe it or not, and we learnt to milk cows. That was the big thing for me. Ellie was much better at it than I was, I have to say. But yeah, it was a discovery of how people get together again, really, through grief. They both felt the same. They just had different ways of dealing with it. So over to you.
Okay, so yeah, I suppose going back to what you're asking about, yeah, where Hope.
What was your brief like from Hope? I mean, these are characters who can't communicate. They can't use words to reach each other. How did she brief the two of you on?
Well, yeah, I suppose because the script is so spare and sparse, like every beat is really important in it, like every line. There's no kind of chat, you know. It's all everything is there for a reason. And what was so obviously the silences were so important, and that was something that we were aware of from the beginning. But something that I thought was really cool, which we did, which I hadn't done before, was that we did a lot of a few silent passes. So there'd be some scenes like in the attic scene. Where were the other ones? Where we did in the mobile home. So we played the whole scene silently. So you just got the kind of visual beats, and we didn't even do it with the dialogue. So it was really fun and interesting challenge as an actor to be using all the spaces outside the words, and that was what was kind of really important in this film, I think, because it's so important, the visual of it and the spaces of it. You know, what can't be said.
Again, thank you. That's my next question for Hope. You name checked so many of your collaborators, your creative collaborators, and your heads of department. It's a film, I imagine, though sparse, reads really well on the page, but it's also working on so many different textual levels, and your collaborations with your heads of department are key to this. Can you talk about how you developed that? When did you know what type of film you wanted to make, how the drama was going to intersect with what's going on other textual levels?
I'd always thought of it as a French film, so that was kind of, it started off as a kind of reference point. So it's kind of like, you know, thinking about the Dardenne brothers, Dumont. And when I met Nanu quite before the script was finished, Nanu came and met with me, and her lookbook was sort of 50% the same as mine, and we sort of realised we had exactly the same films in our heads. And So that was a fantastic point. Because we made the film through iFeatures, we knew what the budget was going to be. So we knew there wasn't a lot of wiggle room. We couldn't use a lot of fancy things. So Nano brilliantly kind of said, so you want it to be cheap, look beautiful, and be really quick? And I was like, yeah, that would be great. So she said, practicals, available light, and you've got some fire in there, which is great. And I was like, oh, and so put more fire into it, because actually at that point the script wasn't locked, so it was great to have that collaboration begin even at that early point. And then when Sarah came on, she's phenomenal. She directed it, she production designed 45 years. She understands working at this budget level, but also what was great with Sarah was going around the locations, doing a lot of scouting together and really understanding the look of the film, the feel of the film, and meeting the people who lived on the levels. And so we could really make sure we got it right, because authenticity was so important to us. And discovering the colours, actually, the real colours, because I think in our heads we sort of thought this would be a blue film, because French films are blue. But actually, a lot of the farms had sort of this yellow in it, and there were these kind of bright blues in the farmyards. And so we sort of started creating this palette that really responded to what was there, partly because then it's there and that's cheap, but also because it looked so fantastic and we knew we'd get it right. So, that was a great journey. And then, just every step of the way, just fantastic input from everybody. The location manager, Charlie, who I think is here. It's Charlie, yay! Found us some amazing places. And because we had such great relationships with them, it meant that the location owners really felt so invested, I think, in the film, and shared so much in terms of props and photos of the floods and things that really helped everybody in the art department, and Nanu and I, and really understand what was the imagery of the story we wanted to tell.
And Rachel, what was it that drew you to Hope's work? I mean, first-time feature director, harder to ostensibly to finance a film. Why were you drawn to Hope's?
Because she's Hope. I mean, we'd been trying to do something for ages, and as all the filmmakers in the room know, that's a hard task in not just the British film industry, but everywhere. And so we've been trying to do something for a long time, and then iFeatures came up, and we had an idea that we thought would work, and that was how this particular film got made. But we'd been trying to do something for ages.
The animals were a great opportunity to have a stand-in for Harry, because Harry was obviously absent, but it was so important to me that we would learn about who he was and what he meant to Clover. And so, because he couldn't be present in the scenes, having Milo there, that really, he was a stand-in for Harry. The hare obviously was a stand-in for Harry. So it was kind of that. And then the horses were really about, her mother and, the past. So I think it was a way of making present things that couldn't be present in the story. It's nature's so important in this film, and a connection with life, and this idea of so it was another layer to bring that in. And I mean, you had a great time working with Milo, didn't you?
Yes, that dog. So that dog, believe it or not, had never acted before on screen. It took him a little while to understand the way it worked. And he was really very energetic, and kind of, as you can see now, came out really well. He was a dog of someone who lived very nearby where we were filming, and he was incredibly disobedient. I mean, not incredibly disobedient. No, that's not right. He was incredibly enthusiastic. And disobedient is the wrong word. Then one day, so it was quite difficult sometimes to get him to do what we wanted, because demanding scenes for a canine actor. And then the scene where Clover jumps into the ditch, this strange thing happened, because his real name is Milo, the dog, and I was in the ditch shouting Milo, Milo, acting, obviously, and the dog something clicked, and we suddenly formed this really intense bond. And from that day on, he would do anything I said, anything. I would click. It was weird, wasn't it? It was like we had a link, like a kind of a sixth sense going on. And after that day, once he'd seen my pain, we totally had this weird connection, and he was incredibly well behaved and professional. And I've worked with dogs before, but But it's a really good question, though, seriously, because I suppose this film is all about, people who can't have conversations, right? Who can't express the way they're feeling. And the interesting thing about animals is they need care, but they can't talk back. So, we've got, like, with Milo, there's this character who, he is, as Hope says, he's kind of Milo. He's kind of Harry. Still living almost the last living shred of Harry. So Clover is able to take care of him, and in doing that, obviously, she can display some of her guilt. But she never gets the answers, of what Harry would have said. So she can kind of. Would you agree? She can kind of transfer because there's so much transferring of messages and guilt and blame. She can do that.
I've also just thought about the fact that she's a vet. I never kind of thought about that before. So yeah, she's someone who's actually made a decision to spend her life caring for animals. So obviously that's something that's just occurred to me. So the floods happened in February 2014, and a fantastically talented photographer called Matilda Temperley took some photos, which I saw in the newspaper. And I thought, wow, this looks amazing. This looks like a great place. And I thought, God, I wonder if I know anyone who knows Matilda. And then I discovered my long-term friend, Georgie Whedon, who's in the corner, actually is friends with her. And I was like, fantastic. So I got in touch with Matilda. Georgie and I went down to Somerset and we started meeting farmers. And I did this a couple of times. I went down and I met some of the farmers. And because Matilda had been so involved in documenting the experience of the floods and the efforts to get the rivers dredged again, it meant it was so generous of her to sort of invite us into the community, and so we got to meet a lot of the people who were involved. So I learnt an awful lot about flood control and flood management, and also then started really learning about farms. And because originally it'd been set on just a beef farm. A beef farm, is that what you call it? Cattle farm. And then actually I started learning much more about farming and discovered that dairy farming is that much more intensive. It's obviously, there's a kind of inbuilt gender issue with dairying farms as well, which was very interesting to me because obviously you need girls because of the milk. So there was something that I found really fascinating about that, but it was also so demanding. Beef, you can just put them out in the field and let them go. Dairy, you have to milk the cows every day, So that was going to put additional pressure on. So I started learning all about that. I talked to badger activists. I started, I just was fascinated by it all. Got very into bovine TB and all the kind of rules about moving cattle. And I just thought it was so important because actually the thing that tips Harry over, there are so many pieces that, to the puzzle. And it's never one thing. It's never simple. And it was just really important that, that we could see how complex and difficult his life was, and that, how something as huge as the floods could absolutely wipe it out, but actually, there are all these other things that then come as a consequence. You're in a bad place, and then this terrible other thing happens, and another terrible thing, and if you had them all isolated, you'd probably be okay, but it just kind of was relentless. So I thought it was really important to get all that right so that we could understand possibly a bit more what Harry had been through. One of the great things about iFeatures is the way it's financed is that you get all your money at once. So whereas a lot of other ways of trying to make a feature, you have to piece it together and there's something kind of drawn out and convoluted about that. This was a very intense sort of quick experience from that point of view. So there wasn't too much time for me to kind of panic about it. So I just kind of had to go. We were on a train. We were going through this fantastic iFeatures scheme, and so I kind of didn't try to think too much about it. I just thought it's just going to be like a really big short. And it was a little bit like that. I think because so much of the work is on the page, and if you're the writer as well, you're actually has that much more time with the story and to really think about the story at a bigger level. And because I'd written other features, I kind of felt sort of that wasn't as intimidating. It wasn't the first script I've written. So I don't know, what was the biggest challenge? Working with Milo, yeah. It just kind of goes on and on. I think post-production, was probably harder because the production, you know, you kind of go through it and it's done and you've got your team and it's amazing. But then to edit for kind of that amount of time and the kind of constant kind of trying to find the film, you know, because we've been on such a kind of intense journey to get to the end of the shoot, right from the kind of early stages of development through iFeatures. The edit was the place probably where I learnt the most. And that's why I'm so grateful. Tom Hemmings, my incredible editor, who'd done some other fantastic work, was just really guided that process for me and taught me so much about actually, you know, what works, what doesn't work, and also, you know, put me in a position where I finally had to kind of go, no, this is the film I want to make, you know, which because it had all been so fast, actually, I sort of almost hadn't quite got there. I was just, this is the story. But, you know, that was a really big period. So I think people don't talk about post-production enough, actually, and it's such an important part of making the film. So, yeah, I would say almost that than more than anything else.
Great. Well, David and Ellie, thank you. In a film full of terrific contributions from a big team, thank you for such gorgeous central performances that so moved all of us here tonight. Rachel, thank you for supporting the team and for Hope to achieve her vision. And Hope Dickson Leach, thank you for joining us for The Leveling.